Tracy Community Church. Memorial service for Daniel and Precilla Gilleland. October 29th, 1988.
Into this world alone. A very insightful comment, don't you think? The fact of the matter is that children are indeed afraid to come into this world alone. That's why God in providence and all wisdom has family waiting for them. Gifts of love, nurture, security.
How are you? Hey, I have another one of yours.
Time to go.
Fire.
Yeah.
You don't have your program.
Where are you going? Glad to know you, guys.
Somebody said let it rain and
How do I work this thing? Okay, everybody ready? Let's go. There you go.
Excuse me.
Sarah! Are you okay, Daddy? Mama!
There, that's the face, baby. Wendy, go down, sit down. Huh? Really? I was teasing. Wendy, stay right there. That's got a big old,
Okay, I'll take a picture.
You want to take a picture?
I'll take a picture. Just a picture.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks a lot, partner. So you just have fun playing in the rain? No?
He's going to take a picture. Let me tell you.
Listen, I'll
These kids go, this is like they got a shower. Back in the car.
Back in the car. Look at the cool.
Gathering here today at this ceremony is to honor Daniel and Precilla Boatwright Gilleland. It's the result of many hours of toil by many, many members of the family, and among those, the president of the Gilleland Endowment, Richard Scroggins. Rick is a seventh-generation Gilleland, born on Texas soil. He grew up in Houston, where he graduated from the University of Houston with a degree in art history. 2 years ago, Rick put aside his pursuit of a master's degree at the University of New Mexico when he became interested and then totally committed to the Gilleland family history and its traditions. Having been told that his great-grandparents, and I hope that I got the proper number of greats, were buried along the banks of the San Gabriel. Rick, along with his father, Larry, and sister Joan, diligently searched the area. A month later, the final resting place of Daniel and Precilla Gilleland were found to be shared by us all. By his commitment and his fierce determination, Rick has given us all a gift today, something to remember, to share with parents, children, brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles, the inherent courage and pride in this old pioneer couple who were among the first to be called Texans. Our great debt of gratitude to Daniel and Precilla extends to one of our own, their great-great-great-grandson, Richard Scroggins, and I would like to present him at this time.
Well, I think Daniel and Precilla would have been very pleased to see this rainfall today. A little bit more than we are. We'd like to welcome all of you who come here this morning, standing out here in the rain, to help us dedicate this official Texas historical marker to Daniel and Precilla Boatwright Gilleland. No occasion like this can come about without a lot of very hard work, usually on the part of only a handful of people. We'd like to thank a few of these right now because, to be honest, they are the ones who are really responsible for the success of this day. Mrs. D. Whiteside, who is a member of our trustees and also our secretary, has put in long hours in the planning of this event, contacting descendants, preparing for the various programs and displays, helping us set up the VFW hall. Mr. Duke Gilleland, another of our hard-working board members, has been hard at work on our flag display and in setting up for the dedication today. Duke also constructed the protective box for the marker, which you might have seen earlier. Mrs. Kim Gola, a descendant, made the beautiful veil covering the marker, which stood up to the elements very well, I want to say, as well as the banner on display at the VFW hall. Mr. Manza Hale, another board member and chairman of the fundraising committee, has worked hard in that area and also in contacting descendants. And last but not least, we'd like to thank Mr. Larry Scroggins, another of our board members, and my father, who has been there every step of the way, helping arrange all the activities at the VFW hall, coordinating the law enforcement officials on the highway, and many other things that helped to make all of this happen. Let's give all of these people a big hand because they really deserve it. We'd also like to extend our thanks to Mr. Frank Schinker and Mr. John Parsons for the Texas Department of Highways and Public Transportation for the fine job they've done in putting up the marker and preparing the site, and for their assistance with the road closing. Thanks go out also to Mr. V.W. Hawk, Milam County Commissioner, for the fine job in grading the road to the Daniel Gilleland Family Cemetery. Our appreciation to the trustees of the Tracy Methodist Church and to the members of the Tracy community for allowing us the use of the church for our service this morning. Thank you, too, to Mrs. Susan Loftus, who played piano so beautifully at the church. Now, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about the Gilleland Endowment before introducing some of our special guests. The Gilleland Endowment is a non-profit corporation chartered in February of 1987. The primary purpose of this organization is the restoration and preservation of 3 Gilleland family cemeteries in Texas. 2 of these right here in Milam County and 1 in Travis County. Last year at this time, we gathered to dedicate the Daniel Gilleland Family Cemetery, which after its discovery in the summer of 1986, became the focus of Gilleland family heritage. Another purpose is to seek historical recognition for those members of the Gilleland family who played roles in the development of this great state, and that's why we're gathered here today. I'd like to introduce some of our special guests if they're still with us. I don't know, we might have lost a few in the rain. And if they're here, I wish they'd signal so that I can have you recognize them. Mr. and Mrs. Perry Holder of Cameron, past and present chairpersons of the Milam County Historical Commission. I think we lost them. Mrs. Breckenwich Wagner, Brenham, chairman of the Washington County Historical Commission. Here she is right here. Let's give her a hand. Elizabeth Graves, who is president of the Sharp Preservation League, right over here. Mr. Stanley Graves, architect with the Texas Historical Commission, right over here. Mrs. Margaret Smith and Mrs. Helen Mortimer of Milam County Historical Association. They're not with us either. Okay. I'd like to say just a word about the flags that are on display here today, because each has a story of its own. The Lone Star flag has flown over the Capitol in Austin and was presented by Representative L.B. Kubiak, who was unable to join us today due to his schedule. The U.S. flag has flown over the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., and was presented by Congressman Max Sweeney. The Mexican flag was presented to the endowment by Mr. Manza Hale, Vice President of the endowment. And the Confederate flag is on loan from the Sons of Confederate Veterans, Texas Division, courtesy of Mr. James N. Fogler, Jr. I'd like to share just a few of the greetings that we've received from around the state and beyond. Vice President Bush, it's been nip and tuck for about the last month or so. We had about 8 pieces of correspondence. Finally learned just this week that he would not be here, but he did say that to express his appreciation for the invitation. I want to take this opportunity to send congratulations to you and the Gilleland family from Harrison County, where your ancestors lived from 1843 to 1845. Your dedication not only represents well the pioneer spirit of Texas, but also is an inspiration to all of us working to preserve our heritage. We know you will have a memorable weekend. That's from Mrs. Audrey D. Carriel, who's the chairman of the Harrison County Historical Commission. The earlier pioneers to Texas that made up Stephen F. Austin's Old 300 were a remarkable group of men, women, and children. The foundation that they put down for a great state was very deep indeed. The Texas historical marker that you and your family members are dedicating on October 29th should serve as a reminder to Texans of the 1980s that we are preceded by Americans of integrity, ability, and a sense of the worth of the individual. I think that we have let slip some of the depth of commitment that those outstanding people possess. Please extend to your family my interest in your efforts and the importance of what the family has contributed and accomplished in the development of our state. That's from L. Tuffley Ellis, who is a prominent Texas historian. I want to commend you and the Historical Commission for placing this marker so that more can be taught to both citizens and tourists visiting our state. We have such a rich history, which I feel is just as great as the history of Virginia, New York, or Pennsylvania. We need to let the world know of the pioneer men and women that helped make this state what it is today. The contributions of these early Texians will be lost to future generations without the work of organizations such as yours. From Mrs. Breckenridge Wagner, Chairman, Washington County Historical Commission. During my tenure as Texas Land Commissioner, it has been my privilege to be directly involved in the preservation of the archival heritage of Texas. You and your family have every right to be proud of Daniel and Precilla Boatwright Gilleland, and I am honored by your invitation to join you in commemorating the lives of these 2 courageous pioneer Texans. I am disappointed that I will be unable to share in this memorable occasion. You have my very best wishes for this special day. Gary Morrow, Texas Land Commissioner. Former Governor John B. Connolly had originally accepted our invitation and then had to turn us down, but he did want to give all of you the following message. Thanks for asking me, and I send my best wishes for a wonderful day on this memorable occasion. Dear friends, I am pleased to send my greetings to those of you gathered for the dedication ceremony. Daniel and Precilla Boatwright Gilleland would surely be proud to be honored in this way. Texans take great pride in the history and ancestry of our great state. The friendly people and rich heritage of Texas are our greatest resources. We learn important lessons in perseverance and determination from studying history, underscoring the importance of organizations such as the Gilleland Endowment. Texas historical markers stand as lasting symbols of the pioneer spirit and the faith and courage which live on in our great state. I commend you for your work and urge you to continue on your path of preserving Texas history for the enrichment of future generations. Yours respectfully, Phil Graham, United States Senator. Greetings. As Governor and for my fellow Texans, I officially recognize the dedication of the Daniel and Precilla Boatwright Gilleland Historical Marker. As an avid student of Texas history, I find it exciting to know that the 2 individuals memorialized here were among the members of Stephen F. Austin's Old 300 colony. I commend their descendants for the research that I know is necessary to establish this historical record. I further commend the descendants of this pioneer family for the discovery and restoration of the Gilleland Family Cemetery. Mrs. Clements joins me in this expression of our admiration and esteem and our best wishes for a memorable dedication ceremony. Sincerely, William P. Clements, Jr., Governor. Okay, I've got one more somewhere here. Find it. Oh, here we go. To the Gilleland family, Nancy and I are pleased to send our greetings to those gathered for your family reunion. There is no better way to link generation with generation than to come together as one in celebration and joy. As you honor the memory and contributions of Daniel and Precilla Boatwright Gilleland, relive past experiences, and give thanks for the bonds of love and kinship that unite your family, you can look to the future with a special strength that comes from knowing you will always have each other. Family life is both an expression and a guarantor of the freedoms we cherish in America, and your reunion is therefore a tribute to all that is best in our national character and traditions. May you have a happy and memorable reunion, Ronald Reagan. Okay, I have just a few remarks, and then we're going to go back to Rockdale. So bear with me here. A few nights ago, I found myself wrestling with words, as I often do when trying to find the right ones to use in recognizing the contributions of Daniel and Precilla Boatwright Gilleland to the history of Texas, the Lone Star State. Leaving the typewriter for the first time in hours, I went for a walk, just as darkness fell. For a little while, I forgot about the Gillelands, my thoughts turning to the cool fall air and the peace that settles upon the land when evening falls. But then, in the eastern sky, the moon began its rise above a dark cluster of trees, and I watched with more than a little sense of wonder as it rose high above the oaks, something ancient, but at the same time something new. This was no ordinary moon, but a harvest moon, full and round and golden, with a light that illuminated the night sky. And as I stood there watching, it came to me that Daniel and Precilla would have looked up at that same moon on their journey to Texas. They would have slept beneath those same stars and felt the night wind on their faces. After a hard day's travel, with an infant daughter to care for, the light from that same moon would have meant some reassurance to those pioneers, alone in an unknown wilderness. I knew then that I had found my theme. It took courage for Daniel and Precilla to forsake a home in Arkansas Territory and embark on that journey to the new promised land. In the fall of 1821, there was no guarantee of anything at the end of the road save the promise of land and the hope of a better life for them and their children. When the Gillelands and those other families reached the banks of the Brazos River, it was late December, and they could not know how significant a crossing it would become. Nor could they know that from that moment on, their lives would be bound forever to this special place called Texas. Each of us can trace our heritage through Daniel and Precilla Gilleland, through spirit they shared as they followed the road to Texas. Daniel and Precilla Gilleland spent their whole lives farming the soil and reaping the harvest of their labors. Some seasons would bring better harvest than others, but they would thank the Lord for what He'd given them and rejoice in their love for one another and the love that grew with the birth of each of their children. For what better harvest can a man or woman reap than that which is sown with the seeds of strength, faith, and love? Strength was something that the Gillelands possessed in full measure. Without it, Precilla could not have borne 13 children over a period of 25 years. But it was something more than physical strength that characterized these people who pushed the limits of the frontier. Life required daily acts of courage if men and women were to protect themselves and their families. In the early 1830s, when Daniel Gilleland found himself confronted by a hostile band of Karankawa Indians who demanded that he give them his corn, he stood his ground, Precilla at his side, until the Indians, unaccustomed to such a show of courage, abandoned their threats and retreated to the camp. A strong faith guided this couple through the years, and never once did they cease to thank God for His blessings. During lives that spanned 5 decades on the Texas frontier, Daniel and Precilla Gilleland found comfort in the Bible and its teachings. They worked in earnest for the growth of the Methodist Church as it developed in Texas, though this was not an easy task, particularly in the days when the Mexican government exercised little tolerance for settlers adhering to the Protestant faith. Love lived in the hearts of Daniel and Precilla Gilleland. From the time of their wedding vows spoken in the spring of 1819 to their deaths a few months apart in the spring of 1873. For 54 years they were companions in love, facing together all the joys and sorrows that life had to offer. Theirs was an honest and deep love, born of understanding, nurtured by the sun and rain, and tested by the wind. Now they lie together beneath a tall double stone, held in a tree's embrace, in a quiet paper is stuck by the rain here. In a quiet place beside the river a few miles from this spot. Time is like that river, running swiftly in the shallows, lying still in places deep. The years have run swiftly past us, with memories that lie still in places deep. But love Love is like that old tree. It embraces and it shelters, but most of all, it continues to grow. So as we stand upon this gentle hill, on this most beautiful of all days, let's give thanks for the gifts of strength, faith, and love that Daniel and Precilla have given us. They were simple people and could not have imagined that some 100 years after they had gone, we would gather here to commemorate and to celebrate their lives. Look around you at this land, long ago home to Daniel and Precilla Gilleland, and not so very long ago to their grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren. Our strength is rooted in this soil. Those who came before us felled the trees and cleared the fields. They planted crops, and the harvest was their reward. Our own harvest can be reaped from seeds planted almost 170 years ago. Those seeds of strength, faith, and love are our legacy to share for generations to come. Let us hold fast to that legacy and the spirit of those Texas pioneers. There is a part of Daniel and Precilla in each of us. Don't ever forget them. They have made us who we are. Thank you. Is Mrs. Perryman still here?
Yes.
Oh, I
She
can't
stayed
introduce
through
you.
the rain.
We had a little quick unveiling a while ago. This is Mrs. Mary Ann Perryman. She is the newest member of the Texas Historical Commission. Come here to unveil our marker. I'm going to let her take it with you.
I think that Daniel and Precilla Gilleland's greatest contribution to Texas is you all, their descendants. Because through your efforts in the Gilleland Foundation, you will have encouraged other people to preserve their heritage. And by the dedication of this marker, you will be sharing their legacy with everyone who drives by who loves Texas history. And I'm honored on behalf of the Texas Historical Commission to have helped young Master Daniel unveil this marker.
Thank you. That's all at this point. We're going to go now to the VFW Hall in Rockdale. We'll see you all there. Thanks for...
Just walk on up there and I'll get you on.
Come on, Gary. Gil.
Did she have a stroke or something?
Dad.
Yes.
Well, I know we'll get in. Dad, get up there.
Well, hold on, let me get this.
I want to see you get a picture of that sign now. Oh, God, don't get me by her.
Okay, now somebody else. You two, y'all have to get up here.
You got to get up here. We'll do your thing.
You got Latin?
Yeah. See?
You guys just enjoyed this.
How do I turn it off?
Mash the button.
come go to see you.
No, we let everybody go. My husband's with Baylor University.
We've been done.
If you want to know if the cows here.
I don't think I did it.
I don't need to be on the camera.
Well, sure you do. Like anything that moves.
You know, I sprayed all these little old things and I want them down.
Yeah.
Those are trees. These are all, you see where that is.
That's my great. I see. My great grandmother and granddaddy. I have met people more strangers that didn't be, down the line, you know. In the last 2 years, in the last year. We never knew anything past that granddad.
Is that June 9th, 17 what? 95, died January 12th, 1873.
What we're going to do before it starts breaking down. We're not going to mow all that. Most of it's brush. That's the bottom.
June 20th, 1803, May 9th, 1873.
Had some kind of boy, there's a redneck bed right up down this side of where we park.
Roger, you see the deer marks on the side there? Look at it.
Yeah,
That's something.
yeah. And they
Rick
still,
the Preserve keep it from washing.
Is that another
one.
headstone?
There should have been Thomas,
where that one was.
Mary, James, that's Roy's ancestor.
They think the
A Charles and Tippy
I believe.
Slater.
Don't you
Uncle
remember
Alex
telling us last night?
5, and someone always said there was 6 plus this big one. And who that would have been, we're not sure.
Well, I don't know. I don't know.
But his ancestor James came home after the Civil War. Somebody got his discharge papers and said that he was discharged, I believe, in 63 or 64. He could have been ill and came home and died. We don't know. I don't know we'll ever know.
Well, I don't think we will, because now there's a lady in Abilene. Is her name Taylor?
I think so.
Now she thinks.
Yeah.
She thinks
That's
not with his brother. It's going to be bigger this time.
The cows are roaming around at the top of the hill where the Daniel Gilleland headstone for Lester Eugene, son of R.A. and Daisy Gilleland.
Oh, really? That's your uncle?
Would have been. Born April 11th, 1902. Died June 2nd, 1902.
Where is John Henry?
Tennessee, February 2nd. Now, doggone well we should be able to find that.
That was Martha Ann,
I think he's done all that. She'll get that in October.
wife of John. Born in Williamson County, Tennessee, February 1830.
He's right on the other side. I'd written dismissal slip of John Henry from the chapter, or what do you call Masonic business in DeVille. To St. Andrews.
Probably where he's admitted from one like this.
That's John Henry's grave. This is John Henry Gilleland.
That's their great.
Born January 16th, 1832. Died January 28th, 1880. Grave of Polly Sanford. Let me see if I can get the headstone here. Been broken and laying on the ground. Polly Sanford, born February 16th, like 1798. Died November 23rd, 1867.
Sanford was Martha Sanford's mother.